The title of my sermon today is From Hosanna to Crucify Him. And you probably know why I picked this title or this message is because tomorrow is the beginning of the Holy Week, the first day of the Holy Week, right? In which the whole Christian world is celebrating. So if there's one way to really minister and talk about Jesus and what He has done on the cross, this is the best time because everybody's talking about this event. All right? So the title of my sermon again is From Hosanna to Crucify Him. And you probably already know where I'm going and why I titled this, right? Because a lot of time we are basically singing the same song. We are shouting the same shout or words that they have done, right? You know, at first, the crowd was shouting Hosanna. Then later on, the shouting of Hosanna turned into the shouting of Crucify Him. Crucify Him. It is very natural for anyone to get upset when the expectation is not met. And I'm very sure that you have experienced that. You have these expectations in life. Man, you know, at the age of this, at the age of 30, I would like, you know, I want to have my own house, beautiful car. Maybe, you know, I settled down already with my beautiful wife. And we're starting to plan to have kids, right? We have this vision, we have these goals, right? And sometimes we're thinking, you know, when I get to college, this, what I want to do, I want to be into this school, right? Right? We have all of these dreams. We have all of these expectations. And the reality is not all the time, all of these expectations become a reality, right? And it's so natural that when all of these expectations did not come to materialize, we get upset, right? Especially when you invested so much time and energy in that particular thing and you have seen it as something that you deserve, right? Something that you deserve. You know, I pick up my kids every day from school, from last year academy. Jed would come out, since Vin is driving already, you know, he has his own time, his schedule already. So I would just pick up Jed and Shekinah. Jed would come out first since he's only in the first grade. He would come out around 2:30 and Kana would come out around 3 o'clock. So you have like 30 minutes of waiting. And while waiting, I would park across at the conference office, parking, you know, and there we would have a chat, you know. And every day, I would always wait for him to tell me what color he got. Because, you know, as part of the motivation of their school, of their teacher, you know, if they would behave, there's certain color that would, you know, match their behavior on that particular day. And the best color that anyone can get is purple. All right? Purple. And if you got red, that means you went to the principal's office. All right? And is he here? I don't think he's here, so I can say he got red. One time. All right. Okay, but most of the time, once he got, you know, inside the car, Daddy, you know what color I got? What color that? I got green today. Okay, that's fine. Still good. Green is beautiful. All right. Then the following day, when he hopped in, after he hopped in, he would tell me, Daddy, you know what color I got? I got blue. Blue is next to purple. Oh, that's good. You did good. You know, it's better than green. So, right. Right? Then one time he would tell me, Daddy, I got purple today. Right? That means he did great. You know, but every time he would come and he would tell me that he got green or he got yellow, which is not so good, you know, you could tell or you could see the frustration on his face. And I would ask him, how come you didn't get, you know, like purple or blue today? Well, this is what he's going to tell me. He would tell me, my teacher was not paying attention at me. My teacher was not looking at me. He was not looking at me. He was just looking, at other students, and she was not looking at me, right? So, the reason why I'm saying this is because every time he would come to me, and he performed well in his mind in school. He thought that he deserved to get a purple color, right? A purple color. And every time he would not get that purple color because the teacher did not look at him, right? He's upset. He's upset. It is basically the same, with our story, right? With our story, with our experiences. So if we can go to the text that we read, in Matthew chapter 21, you will find there the story of this crowd that I was talking about, right? So in this story, you will find there Jesus entering Jerusalem, right? The atmosphere was electric, because of this anticipation. This is a fulfillment of a prophecy. And during this time, it was the beginning of the harvest season in that particular region, all right? And, since they know the prophecy that time will come, the Messiah, a king, would come. And will what? Get rid of all their enemies. Will liberate them, the oppressors. They were they were anticipating these moments. So the crowd hailed him as the long-awaited Messiah, spreading their cloaks and palm branches before him, symbolizing honor and royalty. Their expectations were clear. They envisioned Jesus as a conquering hero, a political liberator who would overthrow Roman oppression and establish an earthly kingdom of prosperity and peace. That was their expectation. That was their expectation. But their expectation, as we all know, is too far from the reality, because Jesus came here with a different mission, right? Jesus' mission is beyond the temporal expectations of the crowd, because he did not come to fulfill the earthly ambitions or to wield power in conventional ways. Instead, he came to offer a different kind of kingdom. A kingdom not of this world. They were expecting a king that would come riding on a horse. But what they saw is a king riding on a donkey. They were expecting a king that will be on top. But what they saw is a king that is a servant leader. And his kingdom is an upside down kingdom, right? Because his kingdom, his was a kingdom of love. They thought that, Jesus would lead them to fight sword for sword against the Romans. But what they did not understand is God's kingdom is about love, is about forgiveness, is about redemption. All right? That's why, as the week progressed, the crowd's enthusiasm waned as they realized that Jesus' intention did not align with their own desires. And they became so upset as expected. After their learning that their anticipated Savior did not meet their expectations of immediate political deliverance. These went out of their disappointments. Their cry went from saying, Hosanna, to what? To crucify him. Same crowd. Can you guys believe it? Same crowd, in a matter of days, shifted from saying, save us, and giving glory to the Messiah, to saying, crucify him. He doesn't deserve to be a king. So the question is, when was the last time that you experienced the same experience? So when you talk about reflecting on this story, we are confronted with our tendencies to project our expectations onto God and His plans for our lives. I use the illustration of my son, and I believe that this is also true with your kids. Kids, when their expectations are not met, they're upset, right? And they would say, I don't love you anymore. Sometimes you would still make fun of them. Really? You don't love me anymore? All right? I hate you. I don't love you anymore. Stuff like that. Right? They get upset, right? We often have these preconceived notions of how God should work. And this is the thing, my dear brothers and sisters, we should have these preconceived notions on how God would operate and should operate in our lives. What blessings He should bestow and how our lives should unfold. Yet, when God's plans diverge from our expectations, this is the time that we get upset with God, which sometimes leads into giving up our faith. Now, what is the problem, my dear brothers and sisters, especially with this type of behavior? When you are like this crowd, you are basically, that when you get upset, when your expectation wasn't met, you are basically acting like God to a real God. Have you guys realized that? Just like what I said, we're doing the same thing sometimes. And by doing it, guys, we are acting like God to God. By saying, I know better than you, God. And this is how it should happen. This is how it should unfold. This is how my life should go. In this direction, not the direction that you want for me. Right? Because when you think about it, if you have this type of behavior, you are coming from the posture of entitlement. Right? Entitlement. Especially those who were who are used to receiving a lot of blessings to the Lord. That's why, we do this to our kids. We don't give them everything that they ask, right? What's the reason for that? Because we don't want them to become like spoiled brats, right? Because once they get used to getting everything that they would ask from us, once they get used to it, we're in trouble. Because time will come, what they're going to demand from us are the things that we cannot provide them. And that can cause trouble, right? That's why from time to time, we would refrain from giving what they ask from us, right? But when we pray and we tell God what to do, we are basically coming from the posture of entitlement. We feel that, we are entitled to this. And sometimes we use these words, I deserve to be happy, right? I deserve to be happy. I work hard for this. How many times you've heard these words? I've worked hard for this. Right? I deserve to be happy. This is what makes me happy. Right? So in that sense, my dear brothers and sisters, if we are doing this, we are using God as an accessory to get what we want and to get so we can get our happiness, right? We see Him as just an accessory, not as a God who is the creator of the universe. There are two kinds of faith. The first one is faith that arises from prayers being answered. And the second one is faith that endures despite prayers going unanswered. What type of faith do you have with God? All right? So when you talk about faith that arises from prayers being answered, you have faith in God based on the experiences of His intervention in your life. It is very normal to respond to miracles. And we can see that all throughout the Gospels. People would respond every time God would perform miracles, right? But we need faith. Our faith should move beyond that stage. That's why at one point in the story of Jesus, when He saw the crowd following Him, He said, well, you're actually not here to see me. You're actually here because I give food. I give bread. So you're just after the bread. This is the type of faith that arises from prayers being unanswered. What I'm saying is, it's normal to, respond with faith when God has done something great in your life. But what I'm saying is we need to move past this stage. We need to move past this stage because the problem is when your prayers remain unanswered, your faith wavers because you have come to perceive Him primarily as the provider of your desires. And when your desires and your expectations are not met, just like the kids, just like Jed, you get upset. All right? So we need to move past that stage, right? And we need to have this faith that endures despite prayers going unanswered. And when you have this type of faith, you have the faith in Him not because of what He may do or He may not do in your life, right? But because, the reason why you have faith is because of His identity and His character, right? So the result of this is, regardless of the outcomes of your life or in your life, whether your prayers are fulfilled or not, whether your expectations are not met, your faith persists because you trust in His divine wisdom. You move beyond that, that understanding or seeing Him as just an accessory for you to be able to get the desire of your heart, right? You move beyond that stage. You were able to connect with Him because our God is a person. He's a loving God. He longs to be in a relationship with you. And this is the type of relationship that we need to have, and that would result into what? Into faith in Him because of that relationship. He doesn't ask us to do or to have like a blind obedience. Remember the story of Job? Right? After all the things that happened in his life, he did not just remain there or just stay there without saying anything. He brought his case to the Lord. He was asking, why, Lord? Why, Lord? When you talk about faith that endures despite prayers going unanswered, he was not saying, to have like a blind obedience. You can, make your case before the Lord. You can ask questions. And that is basically what God wants. In our study group in Beaumont, we just finished a series of study for the past 4 weeks about prayer. Beautiful. Last month we talked about Sabbath. Then the last 4 weeks we talk about prayer. We talk about prayer as talking to God. That's the first lesson. The second one is talking with God. The third one is listening to God. And the last one I believe that we talked about last week was being with God. Being with God. Right? It's a beautiful study. It's a beautiful study. Sometimes, when we talk to God, especially if you are just a beginner, right? A rookie, right? You don't know what to pray. It's okay to borrow prayers like the Lord's Prayer and say it in your word, in your prayer. And as you progress, you learn, then you can say or use your own words, right? Then you can, start making requests from God. But there are times that you just have to remain silent just to listen to Him. What He is telling you. What He's telling you. This is basically the type of relationship that God wants, from us, right? That He wants from us. Which will result into what? To have that faith in Him. If you go to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, this is a very familiar text, about faith. It says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. As you can see in this text, the element of continuing to have faith despite of not knowing or not seeing is there. Right? Can you have faith in God even though you don't see Him? Can you have faith, or would your faith remain strong even though He seems too far away from you? when you can't see His hands? Would your faith remain strong? And that is basically the main idea of this text. Faith is a confidence in what we are for, an assurance about what we do not see. The fact that we know Him, you cannot go into these states, if you did not have a chance to know Him personally, right? If you just got exposed and you just understand Him as an accessory to what you need, you would not have this faith whenever He is seen to be far away from you. It's impossible. But once you develop that close relationship with God, even when you are in that valley of trials, problems in life, your faith would remain strong because you know who holds the future. You know that in the end, He will allow you to reach the promised land. Right? Just like the prayer of David in the book of Psalm, chapter 23. In the same chapter, you will find there, beginning in verse 8 to 13, I read, by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Remember that story? God told him, go. Right? He didn't know where to go, but he went. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents. He was a rich man, right? But he was living, they were living in tents back then, but to be moving from one place to another is hard, right? So, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise, for he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And the author of the book of Hebrew went on and on, mentioning names of faithful stewards in the Bible. The point here is all of these people remained faithful to the Lord despite not seeing His promise in the future. He made a promise that He's coming back. Jesus made a promise that He's coming back. He made a promise that He's preparing a place for you. He made a promise that in the end, He's going to be the victorious, king, right? But right now, your life is in limbo. Your life is struggling. Would you remain faithful to that promises? Would you remain faithful and connected to the Lord, even though your life tells otherwise? You can only reach this level, my dear brothers and sisters, if you have experienced being with God and developed that close relationship with Him. The lesson that we can get here, my dear brothers and sisters, is our faith should be anchored in our understanding of God's character rather than solely relying on what we expect Him to do or not to do. Know Him, my brothers and sisters. Know Him. Right? One author said, there are times we cannot see what God is doing because we are hoping to preserve something He does not want to preserve. That statement is a very interesting statement. Maybe the reason why you don't see His hands is because you're trying to preserve something in your life that God doesn't want to preserve. Right? One Jewish rabbi once said, and this is very interesting, I don't know how true is this. This is what he said: the difference between a Christian and a Jew, when they pray, is Christians tend to focus on their own personal need, while Jews focus on the needs of the world. I don't know how true is that. Right? But, based from my own experience and from what I have seen, a lot of times what he's saying is true. Because every time we approach God, what we only see is ourselves, our own needs. A good example is, back in the Philippines, I wish, Brother June is here. I heard he's celebrating his birthday today. I wish he's here so I can sing happy birthday. Brother June is from Bicol, where I came from as well. Region 5. Who among you here from Region 5? Or from Samar area? That region is the path where the typhoons would pass. Every single typhoon in the Philippines would pass that way. All right? And I remember when we were still kids, every time there's a typhoon and it is signal number 2, we are celebrating. We're not scared. We are celebrating. You know why? Tell me, Chrissy, why? No school. Right? No school, right, Brother Ken? Right? I don't know in Mindanao area, but in Bicol, since, all the typhoon would pass in that direction, we experience all the typhoon, right? We are celebrating. We're not scared. That's why there's a saying back in the Philippines, because that region where I came from is known for, like people who love Bicol Express. You know what's Bicol Express? If you haven't tasted it yet, ask Brother Jun to cook it for you. He should know it, all right? Spicy laing, right? There's a saying that when the typhoon is coming, they would secure first all the wild pepper, the spicy peppers, instead of securing their house first. That's how important peppers to them. Have you heard of that? Right? So here's the thing. Every time there's a typhoon, the kids are celebrating while the parents are praying. But the thing is, it's funny because the prayer is like this. I hope the typhoon would not go this way. I hope the typhoon would go the other way. Have you guys heard of the prayer? Right? And sometimes the prayer is heard. And me, even though the forecast is the typhoon would go this way in the Bicol region area, then eventually, last minute, the typhoon went that way. You see the problem of this? The problem with this, my dear brothers and sisters, is if you believe this, the problem is God is showing favoritism. God is showing, like, recognizing, like if you pray more, then you're gonna, that's going to be a problem, right? That means that the prayer, because I know that the people on the other side are praying as well. But the fact that our prayer this side was answered and the prayer on this other side was not answered, that means God is showing something, favoritism, something like that. Right? But the point that I'm trying to say here is, going back to what the author said earlier, there are times that when we pray, we just focus on our own needs instead of considering the needs of everybody. And this is basically what happened with this crowd. They were so tired of being oppressed under the reign of the Roman Empire. That's why they said, we want to get out of this. But when Jesus came, He said, I don't operate that way. I did not come here just to help you Jew people or Jewish people. I came here to have the whole world. Even the Romans are important to me. Did you guys get, what I'm trying to say here? Right? So, that is a situation. Right? That is a situation. That's why, according to John Bloom, going back to what I was saying earlier, John Bloom in his book about prayer, this is what we must keep in our mind. When you talk about prayer, prayer is a relational interaction, not merely a service transaction. Remember the 95 Theses written by Martin Luther? Right? One of the 95 Theses is about prayer. When he said prayer is not to get answer from God, but prayer is for what? For communication. This is basically what the author is talking about, right? Right? for communication. Faith, when you talk about faith, because prayer and faith goes together, right? Faith is not a divine currency that we pay God in order to receive whatever we ask in prayer. Right? That's why in my previous sermon, I don't know if you remember that, a lot of scholars nowadays are thinking of changing the faith in Jesus. All the faith in Jesus phrase in all the Pauline writings, to be changed to faith of Jesus. Because sometimes it is being abused, it is being misunderstood. We see it as what? As a divine currency. We see our faith as a divine currency. If I don't have a strong faith, man, I'm done. I'm a dead meat. God will not take care of me. But what they're saying is, it is actually not your faith in Jesus, but the faith of Jesus in you that makes a difference, that makes you acceptable in the presence of God. So going back to what I'm saying here is, faith is not a divine currency that we pay God in order to receive whatever we ask in prayer. Faith is a relational response of trust in what God promises us. Faith says to God, I trust you. I trust what you say so much that I will live by what you say. Look at our kids. Every time we don't give to them what they want, they would show us their grumpy face. They would walk away from us. They would say, I hate you, I don't love you anymore. But yet, they remain with us, not because they know they need us, but because they trust us as their parents. Are you folks with me? Jesus showed us an example of surrender. And that is the key word here, my dear brothers and sisters, surrender. Jesus showed us an example of surrender. In Gethsemane, he prayed to his Father 3 times by saying, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet, not as I will, but as you will. You see a good example of prayer here? It's not wrong to request something from God. It's not wrong to bring, whatever is going on in your life to God. But yet, in the end, we have to understand that we are just a created being and we are talking to the Creator of the whole world. So we don't have the right to command God what to do. That's why in the end we say, whatever your will, Lord. Whatever your will. It will be for my own benefit. That's why a bit later Jesus prayed, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. So my dear brothers and sisters, to conclude this sermon, the point that I'm trying to say here is not having expectation is a bad thing, or that expectations always end in disappointment. That's not the point. But rather, it is critical to be very careful with our expectations. Sometimes when you hear a friend telling all their goals and dreams in life, and sometimes when you hear it, it's too good to be true, we tell them, hey, wake up, right? That is basically what I'm talking about here, right? Be very careful with our expectations, because there's a difference between expecting God to give you what you want and God giving you what you need, right? There's a big difference between those two, right? And the fact that our ability to see the needs of the world or the needs of others is marred by our emotions. And man, when your emotion is high, you cannot make a good decision. Remember the story of these 2 disciples in their way going to Emmaus? They were talking, they were so disappointed, they were down because their master has just died. 2 days ago. They were talking. Then eventually there's a stranger that walked with them. They did not recognize him. It happened to be their master that died 2 days ago, and they didn't know that he is already alive, but yet they did not recognize him because of their emotions. So our emotions can blur our identity, our mind and our decisions, my dear brothers and sisters, right? So the fact that our ability to see the needs of the world or the needs of others is marred by our emotions and selfish desires, we would rather, and listen to this, my dear brothers and sisters, we would rather surrender it all to God and let Him be in control of our lives. Because, the moment that you decided to follow the Lord, He never promised that your life is going to be smooth. What He promises you is, whatever happens in your life in this world, He will make sure that you are going to reach the promised land. That's why it's very, very important, my dear brothers and sisters, that as we journey together through ups and downs, right? It's very important to give up of our control. Give it to the Lord. Give to the Lord the power, the steering wheel. Right? Let go of that control. Surrender. And let Him be in control of our lives. Surrendering our expectations to God is embracing His unfolding plan, even when it diverges from our desires. That's why I may appeal to you, my dear brothers and sisters, is in 2 Bible verses. The first one is in the book of Isaiah, and the second one is the book of Proverbs. The first one is this: for my thoughts are not your thoughts, are not your thoughts. God said, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. You have to recognize this. And once you recognize this is what we're going to do. We are going to trust in the Lord with all our heart, and we will not lean on our own understanding. In all our ways, we will submit to Him, and we will make Him. He will make our paths straight. This is what we're going to do. If we do this, we're in good hands. We're in good hands. May God bless all of us today.